Hey guys, this is going to be a video going over my preliminary training program for 2025. So starting from week 60, so last week was my first week back at training after taking my 10-day off season, 10 days completely off the bike, and I'm planning out until this time next year, so October 2024 through to October 2025, as assuming that dates in the calendar are going to be very similar next year. Then I'll be wanting to complete Zwift Academy 2025 next year, and so I need to have the season stretch for a whole year. But these dates are obviously subject to change, so I might have to wiggle things around, and that's why it's a preliminary calendar. But I haven't got anything. It's more of a broad overview of how I want to structure the training over the course of the year, rather than being like, okay, I need to be doing this specific session on this day of this week. It's not that specific yet, just because I don't know the dates of when my main races are going to be. What I've got is this document here, which is the main document with all my kind of ideas for structuring the next year of training. What I started by doing is looking at the races that I kind of want to be from this year. If I'd started this season again, what races would I want to be doing? As I only found out during the course of 2024 that the road racing was something that I wanted to focus on. I only started doing that midway through the season, whereas this year I know that I want to focus on the road racing, and therefore, okay, what are the road races that take place during the course of the 6-7 month season from March to October? What are the races during that period that I'd want to be getting involved in? So just writing down all those dates, and then seeing what races are coming up in which months, and then also looking at my peak races. So for next year, the peak events for me are going to be targeting the British Cycling National Time Trial Championships. Last year that was in mid-June, and then also again, same as this year, target the RTTC National Time Trial Championships, the CTT Championships, which were the 10 and the 25 were the start and end of August, and there's also other CTT events during the championship events during the year, and there's a bit earlier in the season. But like with this year, I'd say the 10 mile and the 25 mile, I'd say those are still the premier events that I'd want to be focusing on. And obviously did well at the 10 mile this year, not as well at the 25, but really want to gun for the win on those events for 2025. I put all those dates in the calendar and then structured how I kind of want the training to evolve over the course of the year. So typically start racing in March, maybe late March, and then racing all the way until September really. But with racing only starting in March, it means now you have a good amount of downtime during the off season and the base season to get sort of training done that you wouldn't be able to do during the rest of the year. So at the moment, I've got here a gym block that I've written out. For deadlifts, I know I can probably follow this progression scheme to get to these sort of values here. So it doesn't make any sense. These are the heavy singles that I'd want to hit, and then this is a volume I would want to hit. Based on previous training, I know I should be able to maybe not get to these exact numbers, but get to a similar sort of strength. So get up to a 5-plate deadlift again, 220 kg, and then like 3 sets of 2 with 4 plates, 180. Whereas for the squats, it's a bit more conservative, because that would be getting to some all-time PBs, which I think is definitely possible, because I haven't pushed my squat in a while, but I've been working on my squat technique for the last year or so, and my squats are feeling better than they've ever felt. So hopefully with some well-structured training, I can push my squat strength to new levels for the front squat and the back squat, and hopefully that transfers well to the performance on the bike. This is a quite aggressive gym block, and it's going to be quite a lot of stress that comes from this. So you wouldn't be able to push it and get to new peak squats during the season, or if you were, it would be taken away from more important training that you should be doing on the bike. So the off season and the base season is brilliant for getting this sort of stimulus done, and then during the year you try and maintain that sort of level with less input. So doing a couple of maintenance sessions a week that maintain your strength to a high level, but you've only got to that level of strength through doing the hard training during the winter really. During the winter, I'm looking to increase my base miles, my zone 2 miles. Week just gone, week 60 was my first week back. So I'm just easing back into things at the moment. So building the zone 2 miles back up, but then I'm also in the gym, going relatively hard in the gym, trying to follow this training program. Also following a 3 days on, 1 day off approach at the moment, as because I'm not racing on the weekends. I don't have any priorities at the weekends. It doesn't mean I don't need to stick to a 7 day regime, whereas during the season I will do. Just because races are going to fall on the weekends because most people are working jobs. But for the next year, I'm not gonna not I'm gonna be riding full time again. So I'm not gonna be I'll do the YouTube videos for fun, but I'm not going to be working a job. I was During the course of the season, I was thinking that okay, yeah, I'm gonna probably start doing some chemistry tutoring during the winter, and then ease it off during the summer. Just have a little bit of money coming in, but yeah, just thinking about that, and especially if I'm wanting to make these theory-based videos on YouTube as well. Like, I kind of want to be spending my free time doing that, and I have a decent amount of money saved up, so I could it is sustainable for doing that for a couple of years. So that's the approach I'm going to go with, and yeah, I really respect the guys who are training around work. As a bit over a year ago, I was working at GSK, and working a 9 to 5 and getting your training done is it really is hard work, because you don't track that additional stress from your work day. You wouldn't class that as any TSS in your training peaks, but yeah, it's undeniable that you can get to the end of the day and you're absolutely shattered, and you just need to you want to get your training done. You're waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning to get your session done before work, and then heading home and getting another 2 hours of training done. It's like so hard work. So yeah, still have a lot of respect for a lot of respect for the guys who are balancing the work. But for me, I really want to prioritize like my recovery and also exploring these other things. I find this stuff really interesting. The coming up with the training plans and such. So I'm enjoying spending my free time doing that. And as long as I'm spending my free time doing useful things and not just watching hours and hours of YouTube, then yeah, I think I'm happy with what I'm doing. Really, going to be going with the 3 days on, 1 day off approach. I'm liking it so far, so I'm going to continue doing that during the winter when I'm not racing. So October, November, December, January, February. I'm going to be doing. So I've got like 20 weeks of doing 3 days on, 1 day off, because kind of links up to a 4 week block. So you think you're 3 days on, 1 day off. That's 4 days. So you times that by 7. So you got 7 of those blocks in a 4 week period, and then you're back to everything links up to like a weekly schedule again. You start 3 days on, 1 day off. It's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday training, Thursday rest day, then Friday, Saturday, Sunday training. 4 weeks later, you're back to that same schedule of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday as your 3 days on, and your Thursdays your 1 day off. But that the days off are rotating through Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday over the course of the 4 weeks, if that makes sense. October, November, I'm just being conservative with it. Just trying to build up the mileage again. I did about 13 hours on the bike this week, and 2 hard gym sessions. They were a bit more stressful than anticipated, so I had some pretty crazy DOMs after the Monday session. I was planning on going to the gym to do like an Olympic weightlifting session on the Wednesday, but I had too much DOMs in the legs, and same for the Tuesday. My legs were too heavy, so I binned off the run that I had planned. But that's to be expected, because getting back to training after a prolonged period off, like 3 weeks of low training / no training. So yeah, I'm starting to, yeah, legs are starting to feel normal now, so I can kind of probably follow the plan as intended. So this is just like a screenshot of like what a 3 days on, 1 day off would look like. So your zone twos, building that up, and then the gym and the steady run, and then the 4th day being the 1 day off. November, very similar, but I'm going to actually start introducing the talk training. I'm going to be doing a 16-week block of talk training. So November, December, January, February, I'm going to do some high talk work. I did experiment with a high talk work last year, but it was a decently long block of high talk work, but it wasn't as focused. I probably touched on this in the high torque video I did. But yeah, last year I kind of found that I tended towards that 70 Newton meters, and I was training at that torque and building up the length of the efforts, which was good. However, I think I can, looking at like my weaknesses, I think I can benefit more from going to like a much higher torque. So starting at like 80 Newton meters and then building up to like even 120 Newton meters. And because of the higher torque, I'll be targeting shorter efforts. So rather than trying to build up to like threshold length efforts, I'll just keep it in that VO2 max range of 3 to 5 minute efforts, I think. But yeah, again, high torque work is something that you can do during the off season. So you wouldn't really wouldn't really want to be pushing it during the season, as I don't think that would line up well with your racing. But you'd want to be doing other stimulus on the bike. You're doing your VO2 max and your threshold work. So yeah, doing it in the off season, building it up to a high level, and then maintaining it seems like a good approach. Yeah, November and December, they're going to be very similarly structured. 3 days on, 1 day off, getting torque work done and going quite hard in the gym. But then also like building up my zone 2 miles. Like I want to be doing lots more longer rides. So and that's one of the main benefits I see of the 3 days on, 1 day off. The fact it gives you the opportunity to get these more long rides in, as you can get like a couple of long rides done per week because there's more rest days. It's kind of more polarized. So you can go harder on your hard days, but then you've got more rest days to balance that out. Whereas if you're doing 6 days on, 1 day off, getting a long ride in, like either you put it in earlier in the week and then you're absolutely shattered for the rest of the sessions in the week, or you save it until the final ride of the week and then you've got a load of training stimulus behind 5 days of training behind that long ride, and it's just so much harder. Whereas if you've got a rest day the next day, and you've only done 2 days of training before that, you can definitely get that longer ride in. And that's kind of one of the stimulus I want to focus on. As when I started road racing midway through the season, I realised that that I could have benefited more from continuing to do the long rides. I've done long rides before, and I'd done them during the winter, but my thought process during the year was, okay, I'm just doing crit racing and time trialing 10 mile and 25 mile TTs. I don't need to be focusing on things longer than the hour, so I just want to be prioritize on my threshold work. But then when I started doing the road races, and it was like a 3-hour road race, and I was suffering, I'm like, okay, this is where the consistent long rides are going to become really useful, and also a different stimulus from that was flagged up as I want to improve on is doing more tempo work and VO2 max repeatability. So being able to do repeated VO2 max efforts again and again at consistently high power, as that's the nature of UK road racing. So we're typically going around a 10 to 15, 20 kilometre circuit, and it has a couple of decisive segments of short hills, because we don't get very big hills in the UK, so they're probably 30 seconds to 4 minute efforts, but you need to be consistently doing really high power on those hills to stay with the main group, so you can be in the draft over during the rest of the course and make that front split. And that was just something that I had going into those road races. I had like a good level of just general fitness from working on my threshold work, doing my TT threshold work, but that specific fitness of holding tempo for a long period of time in the draft, and then also smashing it up the hills repeatedly producing that high power, that VO2 max anaerobic type effort, that hadn't been something I'd focused on, and it's definitely something I want to focus on for the new year. So moving into January, February, I'm going to be continuing the talk block, but the major stint of gym training is going to be done. So the hardest block of gym trainings up until the end of this year, so December. And then I'm going to have I'm planning on building like a more basic home gym setup to try and maintain strength, but not push the strength as much, because I want to move the focus from being off the bike work to more on the bike work. So continuing the talk stuff and then introducing the new stimulus of the tempo work. So starting in January, doing like road bike tempo work, and also prioritizing aerodynamics as well. Like it's all well and good doing 340 watts for days, but you can do 340 watts and go not very fast, or you can go very fast depending on what your position looks like. So make sure I'm working on that as well, and being able to produce power in that aero hoods type position. And I want to make some need to make some geometry changes to the TCR to get an idea of what position I want to be getting into, and then I'm probably going to be investing in a disc brake aero road bike for next year as well, because yeah, I think it's time to make that step as well. Also, January, February, I want to be introducing the torque heat work, as this year I struggled a bit with overtraining, and I think a lot of that came with the heat stuff. So my thought process is introduce the heat earlier on in the year, and then you can start to build it up for when you want to be in peak form for your summer events. And because you've got that basis of heat work behind you, you're not going to be suffering as much as you would do if you go from 0 to 100. You've built it up more gradually. Like, even though January, February, it's like, why would you be doing heat work? It's freezing outside, but that's not the point. The point is getting a foundation of heat work, so that when I do want to ramp it up and it does start getting warm outside, I'm not going to get heat related illness like I have done in the past. January, February, I want to probably continue to build up the mileage, but I'm probably going to be finding what my like optimal mileage is, like probably in that 20 to 25 hour range by that time. Then moving on to March, this is when, like I said, races are going to start, and I'm going to be moving to like more race specific work. So I'll have finished my high torque block. Gym will be more of a maintenance, and then I'll introduce more race specific work. So adding that VO2 max repeatability, doing the races which are extremely difficult, just like holding high power in the draft for a long amount of time, and smashing it consistently up those hills. Tempo, VO2 max work, but then I also want to start doing TT work again. So I think this year one of the stimulus I focused on was just doing consistent TT threshold work, and it's not flashy. It doesn't see you any crazy fitness gains, but it's that backbone of training of consistently hitting like 25-mile race power session after session, and then I think that really gives you something to build from. Like I'd say my training block leading up to the 25-mile and the 10-mile nationals this year, they were quite aggressive, and I'd say I was only able to handle that amount of training because of the foundation that I'd built through doing TT threshold for like 4 or 5 months during the year. And really having that strong foundation. So yeah, I want to continue doing that and make sure I'm getting efficient in position, adjusting my position as well. And like, if I keep this, I might do a Jesse Core type approach of keeping the sessions extremely consistent, just doing your 40 minutes at threshold, and then you can really track how that's ebbing and flowing over the course of the year. Like, you don't need to see progress session to session, but you want to see that upward trend over the course of the year as your training's getting more specific to racing, as you're going from higher mileage, lower intensity to maybe lower mileage, higher intensity. You want to be seeing those fitness gains. But the further we get over the course of the year, the more this is subject to change. So depending on races that come up and maybe doing chain gangs and stuff like that, this stuff might change around a lot more, whereas the off season and the base season, so now to February, I think that's more set in stone of I want to get this amount of this amount of training done, and it's not the training you'll get to do during the course of the year. So going hard in the gym and on doing high torque work on the bike, when the racing starts, this might all go out the window, and this changes a lot more. But that's why it's a preliminary calendar, so it could be subject to change. So so I'd also be moving to like a 7-day approach, so no longer doing 3 days on, 1 day off, because I'd be looking to be racing at the weekends, and 3 days on, 1 day off is not going to line up as well with that. If I'd rather move to a 7-day schedule where I'm consistently having my rest day the day before a race. Also, just put some races in the calendar. These are I guess they're all towards the end of March, but I might do like an early season time trial at the start of March. I did that this year. During this point, keeping other stimulus to a maintenance, and then increasing other stimulus like harder racing, more specific work. April probably going to be very similar to March, so going to be there'll be more races in the calendar as the weather's starting getting better. But yeah, like just again keeping it simple, keeping to the foundations. Don't want to be peaking too early. Don't want to get carried away and doing too much training too early and having to take some time off after that. Like I want to just be gradually building still over the course of the season. And like I say, to keeping most things at keeping the gym and the talk at maintenance, and then introducing more harder stimulus. So a big event of the key event of the season is going to be the British Cycling National Time Trial Championship. So wanting to be in peak form for that, building on the foundation of work I'd done in March and in April of starting the racing, more intense training, more intense sessions. Now I want to build from that and do some more intense training for the 6 to 8 weeks leading up to that key event. So doing a lot more time trial specific work. So moving that threshold, that tempo and VO2 max work, probably continue to do that, but doing it on the TT bike and then continuing that TT threshold work as well. Also ramping up the heat work as well. Want to be ramping that up over the course of the year, getting harder and harder and harder, just to so that during May, when I really want to push up the heat stuff for a hot event where you're really going to benefit from having that heat stimulus in the bank, you're actually able to handle it. And June, like I said, June is the event of the British Cycling National Time Trial Championships based on this year. But after that event, I'll have done like June's quite early in the season. Well, it's like midway through the season. So after that, I think I'd want to take a mid-season break and try and de-stress after that, as I try to get to peak form. You're not going to be able to hold, well, if you try and hold on to peak form, you're probably just going to see a plateau and then like a tailing off in fitness. So it's probably best to bite the bullet, just take a few days off, lose some fitness and then start building up again. I think that's the most sensible approach, and less likely to find yourself in a rut if you do that. And in June this year, I ended up getting heat-related illness anyway. So that was probably me trying to push it too hard as well. So if you try and push it, you try and hold on to too much form, you're probably going to get ill anyway and have to be forced to take the time off. So being proactive about it and keeping on top of that stuff and taking the time off before the body catches up with the training, that's ideally where you want to be. But it's far easier said than done. That like overtraining and balancing overreaching and overtraining is definitely one of the hardest parts of this racing business. Also racing the calendar around this point, but then July I want to kind of, after taking a few days of mid-season break, I want to kind of go back to maintaining the fundamentals and getting things back to a maintenance level, the heat training, a little bit of gym, a little bit of talk, a little bit of running as well for the impact stress that it has on your legs, because cycling being a no impact sport, like we're kind of probably more risk of breaking bones in a crash just because our bodies aren't used to taking that load, especially if we're not doing gym work. So yeah, July I kind of want to go back to the fundamentals, not as intense. I'm not peaking for a key event. So there'll be some events I want to do well at, but I want to peak again in August for the most important CTT National Time Trial Championships, the 10 and the 25. So yeah, do a similar sort of thing to what I did in June, where I do like a peak block. So try and get in peak form for the key event during that period, cutting out any maintenance work of the gym volume and the high torque work, because I'm just going to be focused on doing TT specific sessions. Then September, October, that's when I'm going to, assuming similar to this year, where they've structured it at the end of the season, which is, I think, is a really good approach, and I'm glad they've done it like that, where you just have to hold form. It's hard to hold form. I fucked it up this year, where probably tried to hold form too much and end up burning out and getting ill. But it's much better than later on, November, December, like it was in 2023. Because you should be in higher form if you can hold that peak from the end of the season. So hopefully I can, like, I'll probably take ease off, same as after the June peak. I'll ease off to make sure I'm not risking plateauing and tapering off and losing loads of fitness. I'll bite the bullet, take some fitness loss, and then start building up again for September and October, just to get Zwift Academy done without getting illness and having to to bin it off like I had to do this year. Yeah, things are just going to be a maintenance level, and all road bike work won't have any more TT events to be focused on. So I can do everything on the road bike and just focus on hitting some ridiculous power numbers. Yeah, same for October. Just holding, keeping it basic to give myself the best chance of holding on to that peak rather than going too ham with it and then losing out on fitness. And I think that's possible. And then after October, take my off season, first week of November maybe, first 2 weeks in November. And then I'm not gonna start planning 2026. I think that'll be a bit overkill. I think it's pretty thinking far ahead to have my training plan a full year in advance. But like I said, this is definitely going to change. But the general principles are going to be the same. Of I want to be modulating the different training stimulus during the year. So I've got the different modalities of the gym, the high torque work, the sprinting, the long rides, the heat, tempo, TT threshold, VO2 max, and it's like how are those ebbing and flowing over the course of the year. And I've got some specific ideas of what I want to do for the tempo work. So first of all, just focus on building up the volume. As mentioned, my preferred method for progressive overload is just increasing the volume, as it removes the stress of getting too fixated on power and thinking, oh, this session was worse than the previous session. It's not as good as 2 weeks ago, but that doesn't matter. So long as the general upward trend is in the right direction, then you're Gucci. So that's why I prefer to focus on volume. So the tempo work that I'm planning on doing in January, February, it's just focused on, this is just a preliminary idea of focused on building up the volume steadily. And then after I've reached that decent volume of doing like 2 hours of tempo during a session, then I might want to focus more on power. So I've got this idea of it's called an evolving rep range, but so like you focus on the power target and you only move up to the next step of volume once you're hitting that power target consistently. Then you move up the volume, and then you move up the volume again, and then once you've like hit the max volume for that power, you go back down to the lower volume but at a higher power. So I'll see if that's something I want to do, and I've come up with the same idea for doing the high torque work of how I want to progress it, because I don't know, it's more of an intuitive approach to training. It's from the gym work that I've done, where you're only moving up to a higher power, higher torque after you like max out the volume. So that maxing out of the volume shows that you've got that additional strength, and you have got stronger, and that's when you know you're ready to move up to a higher weight or a higher torque or a higher power. But I haven't really experimented with this on the bike, and you'd have to be extremely diligent with, especially with the torque work, like keeping to a set power and a set cadence. You'd think, put it in erg mode, but erg mode's sometimes a bit weird, so might be able to do it in erg mode, and then I just have to control cadence really. But it might be the case that I have to try and control cadence and power, and I'm trying to do it to plus or minus 2 RPM, and that's going to be quite difficult. But that's the idea I have so far, and I'll be trying that in November and seeing how that goes. If this works well, I think it's a really nice idea of how to evolve your training. So just doing the same for the TT threshold work, and it shows that if you can do it, a session doesn't have to be better than the previous session. It could be exactly the same. Like if you equal that session, that's pretty good as well. But you should see that steadily stepped progress and that general upward trend in your training. So this is a PowerPoint kind of summarizing the key things from the document and like what I want to be focusing on at the different points during the year. So like I say, November, December, that's going to be like my off-season, base season. So just this week and the next few weeks, I'm just getting back into training, and then after that I'm going to be focused on the gym work and also the high torque work. So very minimal interval session stimulus, I'd say, and it's mainly just building up the zone 2 miles, getting back up to 20 plus hour weeks, and finding if I can handle 25-hour weeks. Also going to be doing a lot more long rides, and I'm able to do that because of doing 3 days on, 1 day off. I'm able to handle doing more long rides. The training's more polarized. There's more rest days, but there's also hard days, and so I can get up to those 5-6 hour long rides hopefully, and I think that can contribute to getting to a high mileage, because I've got to 20, 21, 22, 23 hour weeks this year. However, getting to 25-hour weeks, that seems kind of ridiculous to me. But that was because I was mainly doing like 6 days on, 1 day off, and it just doesn't give you the time to get a long ride in. And if you're getting a long ride in, it's only going to be really once a week. You're not going to get a long ride in midweek and then do 3 hours after that the next day. Like, you're just going to be knackered. Whereas 3 days on, 1 day off, I think it's the better approach to if you want to push it for the long ride. So yeah, also want to be building up my running again, just to have the impact stress. Doing running, it's very stressful on the system, and for me, I think it's also really good just to identify any areas that might be tighter or at risk of injury, as they don't get flagged up on the bike or even in the gym sometimes. Whereas you go out running, and if something's wrong, your body's going to tell you. So yeah, January, February, I want to continue doing 3 days on, 1 day off, and able to do that because I'm not going to be racing until March. Again, probably want to push the zone 2 miles, but I'll probably be approaching what I find my optimum is. I'll have finished my highest intensity gym block, but I'll have got a home gym set up, so go get a squat rack, and I'm gonna maintain, kind of probably still push the gym work a little bit in January, February, but not to the same extent I did in November, December, and kind of keep it to a good maintenance level. I'm going to still be continuing my high torque block, so that's going to be like 16 weeks: November, December, January, February. I want to be continuing the running, like pushing to the high mileage. Might be able to get up to 10k runs a couple of times a week. That would be really good, but I'm just going to be doing that to feel. I don't know what I'm going to be able to handle. Also going to be introducing road bike tempo work, so getting comfortable in the aero hoods position and increasing the volume that I can do at tempo and heat stimulus. I want to start introducing it early so that I can overload it over the course of the year. I don't want to just start doing it when it starts getting warm outside, because although that seems intuitive, like, it doesn't give you room to grow it, and you're more at risk of heat-related illness if you have a warm spell outside, and then you start doing some heat training. Like, you're going from 0 to 100 real quick, whereas if you're building up gradually, just getting a foundation of doing a couple of heat sessions a week, and then you can really build it up to really pushing the heat work and not getting heat-related illness. In March, April, May, this is going to be after I've started racing, so I'll have found what my optimum mileage is. I'm assuming it'll be in that 20 to 25 hour per week range, but it might just be around 20 hours. Like, I don't know, it might be similar to last year. Like, when I was pushing consistent 20-hour weeks this year, that was when I was at risk of getting ill, or getting ill. So maybe it's more conservative, but we'll see if we can push it up. And with the 3 days on, 1 day off during the winter, I'm able to push up those long rides to get used to doing multiple long rides during the week. So maybe I can get to a higher net mileage, but we'll have to see. During this period, the gym work and the talk is definitely going to be at maintenance, but I want to keep that in the background, as I'm not just neglecting it. It's keeping it at a decently high level. And especially for gym work, like, you don't need to do a whole lot to maintain strength. Like, once it's built, a couple of heavy sets of compound lifts, your squats, your deadlifts per week, and that's going to maintain a lot of your strength. But yeah, with the racing, it's going to have training's going to have a more racing specific focus. So doing tempo work with VO2 max repeats, basically what you do in a road race. But it's also going to be need to be very aware of overtraining during this period, as it could be quite easy to get carried away. So like taking appropriate deload weeks when required. So during the winter, when I'm going to be doing 3 days on, 1 day off, that kind of fits into 4-week blocks, as I mentioned. And I've got a plan of, like, the 4th week is kind of a deload week, so an easier week to recover from that volume. And either the whole of that 4th week or the last 4 days of that 4 week being a reduced volume and intensity to recover from the training. However, when I'm moving to March, April, May, I'm going to be doing, because I'll be racing on the weekends, it's going to be like a 7-day schedule. So I just need to identify as and when required that I need to take like an easier week. I'm not working on a 4 week schedule where at the end of the fourth week I take an easier week. It's just going to be playing it by ear as to, okay, I'm feeling pretty fatigued. Yeah, I've got a race on Saturday. Okay, I'll take the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday this week quite easy. Then I can still race the weekend having done a lighter week, and that's kind of my recovery week. That's the sort of approach I'm thinking I'll go with, but we'll have to see. This weekly 7 day approach that I've come up with, I think, is kind of the perfect weekend warrior approach. Like, yes, I'm going to be riding full time, so I'm not a weekend warrior because I'm riding during the week, but because races are going to fall at the weekends because most people are working jobs and being beneficial members of society, unlike me. Races fall on the weekends, so I'm going to adjust my schedule to be a 7 day schedule once I start racing, so that if it lines up that I have my rest day the day before a race, for example. But I think this schedule of having a rest day on Monday and Friday, then having this 3 week block during the week, and then having a 2 day block at the weekend is a really good approach. It's very similar to 3 days on, 1 day off. During the course of the 4 week period of a 3 days on, 1 day off block, you're getting like seven rest days. If you're doing this 7 day block, during 4 weeks you're only getting one additional rest day. It's only eight rest days, and it allows you to kind of go do the weekend warrior approach of going quite hard at the weekend, because you've got that recovery day the day before and then the recovery day the day after as well. So it's like getting a decent foundation of work done during the week, your Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Then you can kind of smash it at the weekend. But because it's bookended by recovery days, it gives you room to do that. And I think this might be a really good approach for people who are working full time. Also, during this time, I want to continue building up, like I say, build up that heat work. So I've got a foundation of heat work that I'm going to be doing in January, February, but that's only going to be quite minimal. But then when I start racing, it's going to be getting warmer. I want to be increasing that heat stimulus so that I can, for my peak event, so in June and August, I want to be doing a maximum amount of heat stimulus. And to be able to handle that, I want to have done the base work in the background. Like I mentioned, June and August, they're going to be my peak events, so the British Cycling National Time Trial Championships and then the RTTC National Time Trial Championships. So those months are going to be focused on peaking for those events, so kind of tapering into it, reducing any additional training stimulus that's kind of not directly improving performance. It does improve performance. Your gym work, your talk work does improve performance. However, like directly before an event, it's not essential. So you kind of cut that out, remove that training stress, and then that stress, and then those recovery points can go into having higher quality sessions on the bike. So getting high quality TT sessions in for me, and making sure that I'm peaking to my best fitness possible, and also like doing a lot of heat work during this period. I think is going to be key for doing well. Typical zone 2 mileage, I don't know what this is going to be, but I'm saying in that 20 to 25 hour range. But I think a key thing is going to be, because I'm going to be peaking twice, so peaking in June and peaking in August, during that July period, I kind of want to get back to basics and make sure I'm getting the fundamentals done right. So reintroducing the gym work, reintroducing the talk work, and giving myself like a down period to recover from that hard training block to be in peak form for the nationals. So I think that's going to be key. I might be absolutely creeping during July. I might feel awful on the bike, but so long as I'm doing it sensibly, then I can like rebound from having that dip, and rebound to have a good August. Because if my key events are June and August, it doesn't matter if July is rough, but July is putting the fundamentals in place to recover for August. Then that's what I'm going to do. So yeah, September, October is Rift Academy 2025. Again, I'm after peaking for August. I want to kind of get back to more fundamentals. Like, yes, I want to be in peak form for Rift Academy, but I know from trying it this year that like holding on to peak form is very difficult and can lead to burnout and getting ill. So I think my getting ill was related to trying to hold on to peak form for too long, maybe. So you need to be really careful during this period, and I think getting back to basics, having things at maintenance, your gym and your talk work. I think I'm going to cut out the talk work actually. Um, but yeah, being aware that you're gonna see after doing a training block to be in peak form, you're gonna see a dip after that, and if you don't see a dip, you're gonna see a plateau and then like a worse dip. So taking, like I say, biting the bullet and taking that dip early, and then building back on. But because I'm wanting to do Zwift Academy like immediately after the season, I kind of don't want to see as much of a dip, but definitely need to ease off compared to what I was doing for the training block leading up to the RTCC National Time Trial Champs. So I've made this table kind of summarising how the training modalities are going to change during the course of the year. So these hours, basically I just want to build up the hours through November to February and kind of get to my peak mileage, and then I'll have found where my optimum mileage seems to lie. As after February, I'm going to be introducing the race stimulus, and the training stimulus of the sessions is going to be harder. So your mileage is probably going to come down a bit, but I'll find out what I can sort of handle, if I can consistently handle 20+ hour weeks on the bike, or if it's going to be the same as 2024, where that's pushing it a bit too far for me. So yeah, during the course, so I've got gym, talk training, so high torque work on the bike, sprinting, tempo, VO2 max, threshold, and heat. And I'll just go through how those are going to change during the year. So, like say, November, December is going to be my hardest gym block. So, really pushing it hard in the gym. Then January, February, going to still be pushing it hard in the gym, but I'll have got a home gym set up by then, and that will. I'll still be going hard with it, but it's not going to be the same stimulus as when I had a full-on gym membership, and I'm going hard and pushing it in the gym. Then March, April, again, still going quite hard in the gym, but not to the same extent I was earlier in the year. And then May being the month leading up to my first peak of the year, I'm still going to be doing a bit of gym work, but it's going to be lesser, so that I can recover more from the on the bike sessions. And then during my actual peak, so June and August, I'm probably not going to be doing any gym work, because resting on my laurels to an extent of like you're gonna be able to hold on to that strength for a while after taking time off the gym. So you take that time off during the periods when you want to be at your peak fitness, and when you want to be recovering from, your priority wants to be recovering from your hard sessions on the bike, and you're not going to lose that much strength. So once I get back in the gym in July, in that in between period, I'm probably going to be like close to as strong as I was in May. But I gave myself that extra recovery for the preparation for the British Cycling National Time Trial Championships. Then September, October, again, just want to get back to basics, maintain that decent level of strength, so getting back in the gym. The talk work is going to be a longer block, so it's a 16-week block from November to February, so going quite hard early on, but then unlike the gym work where it eases off then eases off again, it is going to maintain at a higher level for longer, but then ease off to a greater extent. But again, it's quite a similar stimulus to the gym training, and I think they probably have overlapping effects and similar effects. They're in the same camp of resistance training, whether that's on the bike or off the bike. I'd say I'm more happy to get rid of the talk work rather than the gym work. So like for Zwift Academy 2025, I'm planning on just binning off the talk work for a while. Sprinting, yeah. I mean, you're always if you're racing, you're always going to be doing a bit of sprinting training. Like for every session, I do like a little bit of maximal sprints during my warm up, so that you're always going to be maintaining that level of sprinting. I think for Zwift Academy 2025, I want to ramp it up a little bit more, just because of the nature of the workouts. You need to have a good sprint on your legs, but alongside the high torque work, I'm going to be doing a fair bit of specific sprinting work, and then like I say, when racing starts. It's going to be easing off, but it's not really easing off because you still have to do the hardest sprint sessions are probably doing a race where you continually need to accelerate to get back on the wheel and such. Tempo work, not introducing that until the new year, but then when I do, it's going to be doing that road bike specific tempo work, as I think that's going to be really effective for being aerodynamic in races and conserving energy, where if I'm off the front or if I'm in the pack, like being more aero is going to save you more energy so that you're going to have more energy for when you do need to kick. So when I start racing, continue doing this road bike tempo work, but introducing the VO2 max work and also getting in that threshold work on the TT bike early on, just to build that strong foundation. Then when it gets to May, when I'm leading up to the nationals, I want to be doing all my work on the TT bike. So from May to August, all these sessions I reckon would be on the TT, because that's the top priority, being efficient in the TT position. And during my actual preps for the nationals, like I'd probably cut out the tempo work and do more threshold and VO2 max type work, like the harder stimulus rather than like the base stimulus that's keeping you fit. It's that peak in the higher end stuff. And once those championships are done, there's no need to do the TT specific work, so I can just be on the road bike, because it's just about producing as much power as possible for Swift Academy. And then the final thing being the heat. So like I say, I want to introduce it early just to get that foundation of work that I can build from, so that I can actually ramp it up during the summer and not be at lesser risk of heat related illness. So yeah, January, February, getting some heat work done, and then March, April, like continuing to build on that heat work, and then want to be I reckon for my key events in June and August, I think that's where the heat training is going to be the most important and most beneficial. So I want to be peaking the heat for that period, but leading up to that, I want to understand I can actually get that level of heat training done without getting ill. So ramping up the heat training and maintaining it, dropping it back a bit during that in-between month in July, and then ramping it up again. But yeah, for Zwift Academy 2025, like, it's indoor training. It is high heat stimulus stress. So you want to be good at producing power in the heat. So I want to ramp that back up to a decently high maintenance level. So I went through these in a bit of detail of kind of this is my November, December gym training block that I'm planning on doing. And then these are kind of a plan of how to structure my training sessions during the year. But this is definitely subject to more change. This is in the near future, so probably not so much change depending on how the sessions goes. Hopefully I can stick to this progression scheme. Like I said, for the deadlifts, I think that's realistic, but the squats not so much. I'm not as sure, but yeah, we'll see how that goes. And then I might be doing a very similar sort of thing to this, or I might change this around a lot. We'll have to see. But yeah, this is kind of the outline approach of how I want. This is how I'm thinking about the training. It's like how the modalities are gonna fluctuate during the course of the year, and it's like, okay, you get into your peak events, and that's where I'm going to be focused on the heat work and doing the on the bike specific work. During the off season, the base season, I want to be focused on the resistance training stimulus that I'm not going to be doing during the peak season. So I'm doing that to a high level, then easing it off and keeping it at a maintenance level to be as strong as possible, with limiting the amount of stress that's inducing to my training week. As you want to be strong, but you don't want to be smashing it in the gym and be absolutely knackered on the bike the next day. But like I say, this is just a preliminary calendar that I've come up with over the past few weeks, and definitely subject to change, but I'd say the underlying principles are going to be the same, and I'm quite happy with this approach that I've got so far. So yeah.